The sun beat down mercilessly over the Langston estate in the hills of Silver Oaks, Virginia. It was a Tuesday morning, and the air was already thick with heat and unspoken tension. Victoria Langston stood on the marble steps of her oversized colonial mansion, dressed in white linen and large sunglasses, holding a half-empty glass of cucumber water. Her manicured nails tapped impatiently against the stem of the glass. From behind the hedges came the loud mechanical roar of a gas-powered lawnmower, followed by the hum of a trimmer. Jamal Carter, 32, was sweating through his faded green t-shirt and working tirelessly. His hands were calloused, his posture proud. Every pass of the mower was straight, every edge precise. He worked not like a man just mowing a lawn, but like a craftsman sculpting a canvas. Victoria watched him with narrowed eyes. "Jamal," she barked. He turned off the machine and wiped his brow, walking toward her with his usual calm demeanor. "Yes, ma'am. You missed a patch near the west hydrangeas. And those edges by the fountain, sloppy," she said coldly, gesturing with her glass. Jamal looked where she pointed. The patch was barely visible. A few uneven blades of grass, perhaps, but nothing a regular client would even notice. "I can fix that, no problem," he said, voice measured. Victoria sipped her drink, eyeing him as if she were examining a painting she didn't particularly like. "You people are always so slow," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "I swear, if I didn't keep an eye on you, this place would look like a jungle." Jamal didn't react. Not with his face, at least. But deep inside, the words curled into his gut like a cold stone. He nodded slowly and turned back to his mower. He'd been working for Victoria Langston for 6 months. It started as a referral from a landscaping app, but over time, she'd hired him directly, at a reduced rate, of course. "It's better this way," she'd said. "No middleman." But what she really meant was, "I can control you more easily." Each week, Jamal would show up, rain or shine, early in the morning, and do the work of 2 men. He'd mow, trim, rake, clean. Sometimes she'd make him move patio furniture, wash her car, or run to the store. Once, she even asked him to clean the pool filters. She never said thank you. Not once. To her, Jamal wasn't a man. He was help. That night, Jamal sat on the porch of his small rented house on the south side of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a broken mailbox, but it was clean, and it was his for now. He drank sweet tea and scrolled through his phone, checking in on his online classes. He was 3 semesters into a business administration degree at the local community college. Every evening, after work, he studied. Quietly. Consistently. His phone buzzed. A text from his childhood friend, Derek Mays. "Bro, when you gon' start that landscaping biz for real? You got skills. Time to boss up 100 points." Jamal smiled. Derek had always believed in him, even when no one else did. The truth was, Jamal had been planning something. Quietly building a client list. Saving every dime. He wasn't just mowing lawns, he was studying soil types, plant health, customer retention. He was getting ready. But he wasn't there yet. Not yet. The next morning, Victoria called early. "I need you to come tomorrow and Saturday. I'm hosting a garden brunch. Everything needs to be perfect." "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, and wear something nicer. That shirt you had on last time was dingy. My guests don't want to see rags while they sip rose." Jamal didn't respond. He just nodded into the phone. But inside, the seed twisted deeper. Saturday came. The brunch was extravagant. Dozens of rich guests in pastel clothes, sipping champagne and nibbling on smoked salmon tartlets. Jamal worked the entire morning under the blazing sun, making sure every leaf was perfect. He trimmed the roses, swept the patio, and even arranged the cushions on the outdoor sofa. And still, Victoria complained. There's dirt on the walkway, she snapped, right in front of her guests. Are you blind, or just lazy? The crowd went quiet. Jamal looked at her, eyes steady. I'll clean it, he said, voice even. He didn't yell. Didn't storm off. He just went back to work, like he always did. But that night, he made a decision. Enough. He didn't quit, not yet. That wasn't his style. But the next few weeks, Jamal spent every free moment building his website, printing flyers, setting up a logo for Carter Outdoor Services. He registered an LLC. Got insurance. Bought used tools off Craigslist. He even got one of his classmates to build him an app. He was planting seeds. Victoria didn't notice. Until, one morning, she called, and he didn't pick up. Then again the next day. And then a final text. You're fired. Unreliable and unprofessional. Good luck with your next lawn. Jamal smiled when he read it. He was already mowing lawns in the richer parts of town, clients who tipped, praised his work, and referred him to their neighbors. Victoria Langston had no idea. But that was about to change. The higher the ivory tower, the harder the fall. And Victoria's roses were beginning to wither. 2 weeks passed, and the perfectly manicured lawn at the Langston estate had already begun to fade. The hydrangeas wilted, the grass browned in uneven patches, and weeds crept in like silent invaders. But Victoria Langston didn't seem to care, at least, not outwardly. She had more pressing concerns. In her marble-floored kitchen, Victoria sat in front of her MacBook, furiously clicking through spreadsheets and bank statements. Her perfectly sculpted brow was furrowed in disbelief. No. No, this can't be right, she muttered, scrolling faster. Her investments, once her pride and shield, were bleeding red. The boutique real estate fund she had poured $500,000 into had collapsed. Her late husband's trust account, already whittled down by years of luxury spending, had been frozen due to a legal dispute. And the property taxes on the Langston estate had increased dramatically. Victoria closed the laptop and pressed her hands to her temples. Where did it all go wrong? Outside, her son Travis lay shirtless on a sun lounger, vaping and scrolling TikTok. Mom, he called lazily. The pool guy didn't show up again. The water's green. It's gross. Then call someone, she snapped, voice sharp. Travis didn't respond. He just kept scrolling. Victoria exhaled slowly, then stood, heels clicking against the tile as she walked to the glass doors. She looked out over the once flawless yard. The uncut grass. The drooping roses. It was humiliating. She thought briefly of Jamal. How meticulous he was. How he never talked back, never complained, never needed reminders. But then she pushed the thought away. He was just the help. And now, he was gone. Across town, Jamal Carter was standing in front of a modest suburban home in Eastdale, loading equipment into his newly painted van. The bold lettering on the side read, Carter Outdoor Services, clean. Precise. Professional. Licensed. Insured. Family-owned. He'd just finished a job for the Rowans, his third new client this week. Mrs. Rowan had given him lemonade, written him a glowing review, and tipped him $40. You're not like the others, she'd said kindly. You actually care. And Jamal did. Every blade of grass mattered. Every customer's yard was a reflection of his name now. As he sat in the driver's seat, his phone buzzed. It was Derek again. Bro, you not gon' believe this. We got the green light. Venture funding, $50,000 to scale your biz. Let's go. Rocket fire. Jamal stared at the screen, then laughed quietly. All those late nights studying finance. All those weeks eating ramen to save money. It was paying off. Meanwhile, Victoria stood at the front entrance of the country club, trying to act composed. But behind her smile was panic. Inside, she met with her financial advisor, George Eldridge. He didn't waste time. "Victoria, the Langston Fund is gone. The trust will be tied up in litigation for months. You're burning $30,000 a month just to maintain your estate." She blinked. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying, you need to sell something. Fast." "No," she said coldly. "That house has been in our family for decades." "I'm not." "Then you need a job, Victoria." The word hung in the air like poison. Victoria Langston. A job? She stood and left without saying goodbye. Back at the Langston estate, things deteriorated quickly. The cleaning lady stopped showing up after being stiffed twice. The pool was now murky green. The air conditioner broke and went unrepaired. Victoria cancelled her country club membership, for political reasons, but the truth was simpler, she couldn't afford the monthly dues. Even Travis began to ask questions. "Mom, are we broke?" "No," she snapped. "We're just reorganizing." But one afternoon, a pink slip from the county was taped to their front gate, foreclosure proceedings initiated. And just like that, her facade cracked. 3 miles away, Jamal stood outside his newest client's home, a luxury condo in Crestview Towers. He shook hands with the building manager, who had just awarded him a contract for weekly maintenance. "This is just the beginning," he told Derek on a call later. "I got 3 referrals from this one gig alone." Derek grinned through the screen. "Next year this time, we're not cutting lawns, we're managing fleets, bro." One morning, Jamal passed by the Langston estate on his way to a client. Out of instinct, he slowed the van and glanced at the property. It was unrecognizable. The hedges were overgrown. The roses had died. The front fountain was dry and cracked. There was an old cardboard box on the porch. And Victoria? She was standing in the driveway, wearing yoga pants and no makeup, arguing with a man in a cheap blazer, likely a realtor. Jamal didn't smile. He didn't sneer. He just looked. And then he drove on. But in his chest, something stirred. Pity? Maybe. But deeper than that, a quiet resolve. The Langston estate, once a symbol of affluence and power, was now a shadow of itself. Ivy clung to the columns like overgrown grief. The windows, once sparkling, now carried the dullness of abandonment. Even the mailbox leaned slightly to the side, as if it too had given up. Inside, Victoria sat in the den, sipping cold instant coffee from a chipped mug. She stared at the foreclosure letter in her hand, the bold font like a final insult. Final notice, property to be auctioned. She was officially days away from homelessness. She laughed bitterly. The woman who once bragged about her 5-burner Viking stove was now boiling noodles on a single hot plate in the garage, the electricity barely holding on. The estate's grand chandelier had been sold to a collector in New York for pennies compared to its worth. Her diamond tennis bracelet? Pawned. The Chanel bags? Gone. And Travis? He'd moved into his friend's dorm room and hadn't called in a week. Her own son had jumped ship. She was alone. Utterly alone. And no one came to help. No one, except him. Jamal Carter sat in a conference room on the 17th floor of a downtown high-rise. He wore a clean navy blazer over a crisp white shirt. No tie, he didn't like how they choked him, but he looked professional, sharp. Across from him sat Rachel Vega, a local news anchor for Channel 6 Morning Spotlight. "So, Mr. Carter," she began with a soft smile, "tell us again, how did you go from mowing lawns to managing one of the fastest-growing landscape startups in the tri-state area?" Jamal smiled modestly. "Well, I never saw myself as just a lawn guy. Every job was a stepping stone. Even when folks didn't treat me right, or didn't see me at all, I knew my worth. Rachel leaned forward. There's a rumor floating around, that one of your former clients actually fired you unfairly and later lost everything. Jamal chuckled, but didn't name names. Let's just say, karma has an interesting sense of timing. That night, Victoria watched Jamal's interview on a cracked iPad screen. Her Wi-Fi had been disconnected, but she caught the segment on a neighbor's hotspot. At first, she couldn't believe her eyes. There he was. The man she once dismissed without thought. Wearing tailored clothes. Confident. Speaking with power. Grace. Her mouth fell open. The segment ended with Rachel announcing that Carter Outdoor Services had signed a deal with the city of Charlotte to maintain 3 of their public parks. Victoria stared blankly. That contract alone was worth more than what she'd inherited after Richard's death. The irony was suffocating. The following morning, Victoria received a knock at the door. It was soft, polite. She opened it slowly, half expecting a debt collector. Instead, it was a man in a black vest and baseball cap. Hi, ma'am. I'm from Carter Outdoor Services. We're doing complimentary yard rehab for distressed properties in the area. You were referred by the bank. Victoria blinked. The bank referred, who exactly sent you? The man smiled, handing her a neatly printed flyer. Carter Cares, giving back to communities that gave us nothing. Below it was a quote from Jamal. We don't rise to gloat. We rise to give back, even to those who didn't see us before. Victoria's face flushed crimson. She handed back the flyer. No. Thank you. We don't need charity. But as the door closed, her knees buckled. She needed everything. That evening, Jamal parked his Tesla outside a modest cafe near uptown. He was meeting an investor, someone who'd seen the news piece and wanted to back Carter Outdoor as a national franchise. As he sipped his drink, a figure approached the table, hesitant, thinner, and wearing large sunglasses despite the dusk. It was Victoria. He stood slowly, unsure what to say. She removed the sunglasses, revealing tired eyes that had once looked at him like dirt. Jamal, she said softly, I saw you, on TV. He nodded. I figured. I wanted to say, congratulations. You've done, well. He didn't respond immediately. He studied her, noticing the trembling hands, the faded clothing, the pain in her posture. It was strange seeing her like this, stripped of polish, raw and vulnerable. Why are you really here? He asked calmly. Victoria hesitated. Then, she spoke the words she never imagined she'd say to a man like him. I need work. Silence. Jamal leaned back in his chair, considering her. You fired me because I was black. She swallowed hard. I was wrong. No, he said gently, you were you. Just the version of you that had power. She looked away. I can do anything, she said quickly. Cleaning, bookkeeping, admin work. I can't lose my home. Jamal was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a card. You start Monday. At the Eastdale office. 9 a.m. sharp. You'll assist my operations manager. Her eyes widened. You'd give me a job. I'm not doing it for you, he said simply. I'm doing it because I can. And with that, he stood, nodded once, and walked away. Victoria sat at the table long after he left. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Her pride was still trying to catch up with her shame. The Carter Outdoor Services office in Eastdale was everything Victoria never imagined herself walking into, modern, buzzing with young, ambitious professionals. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light, and lush indoor plants gave it the feel of an eco-chic magazine spread. Victoria Langston stepped through the glass doors in a conservative navy skirt and a blouse she hadn't worn since her husband's funeral. It smelled like mothballs and desperation. She was 58. And she was about to start her first real job. The receptionist, a young black woman with braided hair and wireless earbuds, barely glanced up. Name? Victoria Langston. I'm new. The receptionist tapped something into her screen, then gave her a tight smile. Oh. You're Jamal's project. The word stung. Victoria nodded silently, accepting the badge and instructions to wait for her supervisor. Within moments, Clarissa Thomas stepped forward. She was in her 30s, tall, athletic, and sharply dressed in black slacks and a green silk blouse. Her eyes were calculating, her voice confident. "Mrs. Langston," she said. "I'll be your supervisor. I understand you'll be helping with administrative overflow for the quarter." Victoria nodded. "Of course. I'm happy to contribute." Clarissa didn't smile. "I don't tolerate lateness, gossip, or hand-holding. If you can't handle spreadsheets, learn. If you're uncomfortable taking orders from people younger, or darker, then you leave now." It was a test. Victoria inhaled deeply. "I understand." Clarissa gestured toward a back desk near the break room. "You'll work there. Payrolls in 3 days. Clock in and out with the app. You'll figure it out." The hours were long. The tasks were menial. Filing. Data entry. Invoice matching. But Victoria worked silently. Relentlessly. Her fingers cramped from typing. Her eyes burned from screen time. She'd never had to use Excel formulas in her life. She watched YouTube tutorials at night under the covers like a student cramming for finals. She made mistakes. Many. Once she emailed a client's invoice to the wrong vendor. Jamal didn't scold her. He simply forwarded the error to Clarissa, who chewed Victoria out in a 3-minute tirade filled with thinly veiled resentment. "You're not here as some redemption story. You're here because Jamal believes in second chances. Don't make him regret it." Victoria took it all. She said, "Yes, ma'am." She fixed the mistake. She kept going. One evening, Jamal returned to the office late. The cleaners were vacuuming near the front, and most of the team had gone home. But Victoria was still there, hunched over a screen with glasses perched at the tip of her nose. He walked over. "You're still here?" She looked up, startled. "Yes, Mr. Carter. I was trying to finish reconciling this contractor expense list. I thought it was straightforward, but some receipts don't match the logs." He nodded, scanning the screen. "You caught that?" She straightened a bit. "Yes. It didn't feel right." Jamal gave a small smile. "You've improved." Her heart fluttered at the words, even though they were delivered flatly. For weeks, she'd felt invisible, like a ghost of the person she used to be. Those 2 words, "you've improved," felt like water in a desert. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm trying." He pulled a chair next to her and started looking through the data. They worked quietly, side by side. Eventually, she spoke. "Why did you hire me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, he said, "Because I remember what it felt like, when no one saw me as worth helping." Victoria lowered her eyes. "I was cruel to you," she admitted. "You were," he replied. "But not unique. I faced worse. I faced it younger. I faced it louder." She swallowed. "I never hated you because you were black, Jamal. He held up a hand. "Don't lie to me. Or to yourself." Silence. He continued, his tone even. "You didn't hate me. You feared me. You feared what I represented. You feared someone beneath your status might one day stand eye to eye with you. And here we are." Victoria clenched her jaw. The truth was harder than any insult. But she nodded. You're right. They worked silently for another few minutes. Then he stood. You'll get a raise next month, if Clarissa signs off. Keep showing up like this. Victoria felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. Thank you. He paused at the door. Don't thank me. Earn it. And he left. That night, Victoria sat on her mattress, now on the floor of a one-bedroom apartment she could barely afford, and opened a worn leather journal. It had once been Richard's. She hadn't written in years. But tonight, she did. Day 47. I am not proud of who I was. But I'm beginning to respect who I'm becoming. Today, a black man gave me dignity. Not because I earned it. But because he did. Meanwhile, Jamal stood at the edge of a rooftop in downtown Charlotte, sipping a ginger beer as the skyline glowed behind him. Beside him, his friend and CFO, Marcus, grinned. You're a better man than me. I would have let her rot. Jamal laughed. I thought about it. But then, what's the point of success if you can't be the bigger man? Marcus shrugged. Bigger man or not, people like her don't change. Jamal looked out at the city. We'll see. March, 8 months later. Victoria had found a strange peace in her new life. The work was humbling, and the hours sometimes grueling, but she had structure now. She had purpose. And for the first time in decades, she had something close to, friends. She and Clarissa weren't close, but there was mutual respect now. Clarissa even complimented her once, grudgingly, on how neatly she reorganized the billing system. Jamal's company had grown another 22% over the past quarter, expanding into new counties. New clients, new hires. He was getting attention from national contractors. And Victoria had slowly grown from a charity hire to a dependable assistant. But peace, as always, was fragile. The story broke on a Thursday morning. Jamal was in a virtual meeting when Marcus stormed into the office holding a printout. Hey! You need to see this now. Jamal raised a brow, muting his call. Marcus dropped the article in front of him. Langston estate tied to decades of discriminatory housing practices, newly unearthed documents show. Jamal's chest tightened. It was from the Eastdale Review. A long-form piece. Painstakingly researched. Backed by scanned contracts, emails, and even internal memos. Richard Langston, Victoria's late husband, had overseen a portfolio of real estate investments stretching back to the 1980s. And he had built his fortune off buying foreclosed homes in predominantly black neighborhoods, suppressing property values through lobbying, then flipping those same homes at a markup once the neighborhoods gentrified. In many cases, he worked with banks to deny black applicants loans, only to offer them exploitative rental deals through shell companies. Jamal read it twice. Then leaned back. Jesus. Marcus nodded grimly. Your little intern's husband was a goddamn monster. Worse, there was mention of Victoria in the files. Her name appeared on several documents as an officer of Langston Equity Management. She wasn't just the wife. She had signed off on deals. She'd been involved. By noon, the article was everywhere in local circles. Blogs, Twitter, neighborhood groups, even LinkedIn. And suddenly, Carter Outdoor Services wasn't just known as the fastest-growing landscaping empire in North Carolina, it was being tagged in angry threads about complicity, about white privilege, about forgetting. Clarissa slammed into Jamal's office without knocking. Have you seen this? He nodded. I'm already drafting a statement, she said. But you need to fire her. Jamal looked up. She hasn't said a word to me. She knew. There's no way she didn't. Jamal folded his hands on the desk. Get her. Victoria was sitting at her desk, eyes red. She had seen the article the moment it broke. Her inbox was already filling with hate mail. Some people recognized her photo from old charity gala photos, back when she wore diamonds and hosted brunches at the Langston estate. Now she looked like a tired librarian. Clarissa appeared beside her. "Jamal wants to see you. Now." Victoria rose silently. When she entered the office, Jamal didn't say a word at first. Just gestured to the chair across from him. She sat. "You read it?" he asked. She nodded. "So, talk." Victoria exhaled shakily. "I didn't know the extent of what Richard was doing. I knew we were investing in real estate. He handled the legal side. He always said the homes were abandoned, or that we were revitalizing struggling neighborhoods. He said we were helping the city." Jamal stared at her. "And you believe that?" She met his gaze. "I wanted to. I needed to." Silence. "Then, you signed those papers." "I didn't ask questions. I lived in a world where not asking was rewarded." Jamal's voice was calm, but cold. "Do you know how many families lost homes because of your husband's schemes? How many kids I went to school with whose families were evicted overnight? I lived that revitalization. I watched friends move into cars. I watched elders die in shelters." She lowered her head. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness." Jamal stood and walked to the window. "Good. Because I'm not offering it." She flinched. But then he turned. "I should fire you." "I know. But I won't." Her head shot up. "Because if I do, you'll crawl back to obscurity and never have to face what this is. But here, under my roof, in my company, I want you to carry it. Every day." Victoria's lip trembled. "I already do." "No," Jamal said. "You carry shame. That's easy. I want you to carry service. You're going to help run the new community reinvestment program we're launching. Scholarships, housing funds, job placement." Victoria blinked. "You want me to help run it?" He nodded. "You're going to help dismantle what your husband built. Brick by brick. And if you do it well, maybe, you'll start to understand the weight of what it means to rebuild from nothing." That evening, Victoria sat in her apartment with the newspaper laid out on the floor. She circled every name, every number. Every file in the article. She pulled out her late husband's boxes from the closet. Financial records, correspondence, notes. She worked through the night. She wasn't trying to clear her name. That wasn't possible anymore. She was trying to pay. Meanwhile, Jamal stood in his warehouse, watching a young crew member, Jeremiah, teach a group of high school interns how to handle landscaping drones. Marcus leaned on the railing beside him. "You really trust her with this?" "No," Jamal said. "But I trust that the system doesn't fix itself unless people like her are forced to do the work." "You think she can change?" Jamal didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Change isn't the point. Accountability is." June, a year later. It had been a full year since Jamal and Victoria started the community reinvestment program, and the results were mixed, to say the least. The city had a budgetary shortfall, and as always, there were whispers about where the money went, whispers that almost always traced their way back to Victoria's involvement. Yet for every critic, there was a parent who could now afford a home. For every naysayer, there were dozens of children walking through newly renovated classrooms. For every business deal that didn't go as planned, there were jobs created, apartments saved, and communities revived. And it had become personal. Victoria found herself in meetings late into the night, writing letters of apology to people whose homes had been lost years ago, setting up scholarship funds, working with local businesses to give a second chance to those who had been displaced. There was no fixing what was broken, no magical undoing. She could only try to build again, piece by piece. The burden was heavy. But what Victoria hadn't expected was how much she would begin to hate the weight of her own redemption. One evening, a private jet landed at Eastdale Municipal Airport. Its owner was none other than Hawkins Capital, one of the wealthiest conglomerates in the U.S., and, as it happened, one of the largest real estate developers. Jamal had been approached. He hadn't responded immediately, but now, with an enticing offer on the table, there was pressure to make a decision. Hawkins Capital wanted to buy out Carter Outdoor Services, an acquisition that would not only secure Jamal's legacy but potentially elevate it. Financial freedom. Expansion. All the things he had worked toward. But there was a catch. Hawkins Capital didn't want the community reinvestment program. They didn't want to keep the resources or the outreach. They wanted Carter's technology, the brand, the business. And Jamal had a choice. He could sell it all, walk away, live in luxury for the rest of his life, and retire early. He had earned that option. But in doing so, he would dismantle everything he had worked to build. He leaned against his office door, thinking of the conversations he had had with his crew. They had come a long way, and it wasn't just about profits anymore. It was about something bigger, something he had started to feel was more important than the money, the deals, the corporate promises. Meanwhile, Victoria was at her desk, the glow of her laptop casting long shadows. She had just finished reviewing a report on a new initiative, an initiative designed to get more black entrepreneurs into the landscaping business. It was small, but it was hers. She had fought for it, and now there were signs of success. Her phone buzzed. It was Jamal. "We need to talk." She sighed. Another meeting. But this one felt different. Jamal entered her office an hour later, his expression unreadable. Victoria stood up, wiping her hands on her pants. "What's going on?" she asked. Jamal paced for a moment before sitting down. "We've been offered a buyout. Hawkins Capital." She froze. Hawkins? They want the company. They want the whole thing. But they want to kill everything we've built. The community program, the outreach, all of it. Victoria swallowed hard. She had spent a year trying to repair the damage, trying to fix the fabric her husband had torn apart. The thought of it all being reduced to a corporate acquisition was unbearable. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Jamal sat back, his voice steady. "Tell me, Victoria. Do we sell out and take the money? Or do we stand firm, keep the company, and continue what we've started here?" Her mind raced. There was so much to lose. It would be easier to sell. The money would secure her future, ensure that she never had to struggle again. But then she thought about the work. The children. The families. The faces she had seen in those community meetings. The people who had trusted her with their dreams. "Jamal, if we sell out, we're no better than the people we swore to fight against." He nodded, his eyes hard. "I know." That night, they sat together, reviewing the offer, the consequences, and the reality of their choices. And as the clock ticked past midnight, they made a decision. They would not sell. July, the following month. The announcement was made at the city council meeting. Jamal and Victoria stood before a room full of local media, reporters, and city officials. "We are not selling," Jamal declared. "Instead, we are doubling down. We are expanding this program, working with local councils, and partnering with community leaders to continue making this city a place of opportunity for all." Victoria's hand tightened around the podium. She could hear the murmurs behind her, the skeptical glances from some of the wealthier officials. But she stood tall. She was no longer a woman of privilege. She was a woman of purpose. The next year was difficult, but the results were undeniable. While other companies folded under the pressure to sell, Carter Outdoor Services thrived in ways no one expected. Jamal's vision of a company rooted in community outreach paid off. Slowly, the work he and Victoria had poured into the neighborhoods began to bloom. The scholarship fund grew. More children graduated from high school with scholarships for college. More homes were saved, and new businesses were born. 1 year later, Jamal stood on the steps of City Hall, shaking hands with community leaders, his suit neatly pressed, but his mind focused on something else. He could see the faces of the people who had worked beside him, the faces of the kids who were now leading small landscaping crews, the faces of those who had given him, and Victoria, a chance to truly redeem themselves. He turned to Victoria, who was watching the crowd from a distance, her expression distant, thoughtful. "We did it," he said quietly. She smiled, but there was a weariness in her eyes. "No, we didn't. But we got closer." The next morning, Jamal drove past the now renovated homes of Eastdale. New families. New hopes. And the fading shadow of the past, its hold slipping away with every new brick. It wasn't perfect. And maybe it never would be. But for the first time, Jamal felt like he could breathe easy. And when he looked at Victoria, standing beside him, she seemed to breathe a little easier too.